I am starting out with a 12-ounce wine tumbler, and I am brushing on a thin layer of liquid Sculpt to help my ultralight stick to the cup. Then I just proceed to wrap the entire cup in a thin coat of ultralight. Next I take some crumpled up foil to create the armature for the legs, and I attach them to the base of my tumbler. Then I flip him over and try to get the right placement for the legs so that he will stand balanced, and then when I'm happy with the placement, I flip him back over and then I bake him. Now that our cup is baked and cooled, we are going to apply a layer of liquid Sculpt to our ultralight to help our super Sculpt stick to our baked clay. And we are going to wrap the entire cup in a thin layer of super Sculpt. Once you have your cup completely wrapped in clay, then we're going to wrap a small band of clay around the base of his torso to be the bottom of his Santa jacket, and we're just going to use a silicone tip tool to create the fur texture by just randomly making marks into the clay. Next, we are going to add a cone-shaped piece of clay to create his tail. Now we're just going to add a small rope of clay to the front of his feet to just kind of widen up those feet a little bit. To make each of his toes, we are going to add 4 balls of clay to the front of his foot and then blend it in. Then we're going to add 4 smaller balls of clay to the ends of each of his toes to create the claws. Then we're going to wrap another band of clay around his ankle to create the fur around his pants. Then you'll texture it the same way you did with his jacket. Then you'll repeat on the other side. Next, we are going to add a fur collar around the top of the tumbler, and we are going to blend it in and then create the fur texture. For Scrump's body, I create an oval-shaped piece of clay out of ultralight for his head and then attach a smaller shaped oval to the bottom of it for his body. You can do this with foil if you prefer. I just find ultralight easier to work with. Now that he's baked, we apply a thin layer of liquid Sculpt to Scrump's body, and then we will cover him in a thin layer of Super Sculpt. Next, we are going to attach the legs by applying a little bit of liquid Sculpt to the end and then blending it in at the base of Scrump's body. Then we are going to create the mouth with a silicone tip tool or a needlepoint tool. Then we will use some circles to create the eyes and our needlepoint tip tool to create the buttonholes. Then we will take some small, thin snakes of clay to create the threads. Then I'll use some small, thin snakes of clay to create the stitches over his mouth. Now to give him a hat, and we are going to use a slightly cone-shaped piece of clay at the top of his head, and then we are going to wrap it with a band of clay to give it that fur texture at the end of the hat. For Stitch's hands, we are going to take a larger snake of clay and cut 3 pieces at the end of his hand to create fingers, and we are going to round them out to slowly shape them. Then we are gently going to pinch the end of his fingers to create his claws. Now we're going to attach it by applying a thin layer of liquid Sculpt to the base of his arm, and then we are going to blend it in and wrap his hand right around Scrump's body. It's a lot easier to do this part before you attach the arm, but here I'm just applying a band of clay around his wrist to create the fur texture at the end of his sleeve. Also add the ball at the end of Scrump's hat. I'd forgotten to add the jacket details to Scrump before I added the arms, so I would recommend doing this before you add Stitch's arms. But I'm just adding the band to the base of his body and creating that fur texture for his jacket. Now we are going to create the arms for Scrump, and we're just going to hang them right over Stitch's arms, and we're going to blend them in and add the fur around the arms. I am wrapping a ball of foil in Super Sculpt until smooth. If you would like it to have a straw hole, you will have to account for that when making your topper. I wanted mine to be more of a candy jar, so I didn't account for a straw hole. Once you are happy with the shape of his head, we are going to add a snake of clay to the base to help cover up the lid and to give it more of the stitch-shaped head. For the eyes, I used a rope of clay and created a teardrop shape for each of the eyes, and I smoothed and blended it into the head. For the nose, I take a ball of clay and I cut it in half, and then I place it right in between the two eyes and blend it in. Then I add the nostrils right at the base of the nose. Now we are going to create a smile with a needlepoint tip tool. Then I add a little bit of clay right at the end of his smile to give it a little bit of folds for his cheeks. For his eyes, we're going to do a teardrop shape, and we are going to place it right in the center of those sockets and blend it in. Then we take a very thin snake of clay and place it right at the top of those sockets for the eyebrows. For his ears, I use some armature wire and I wrap it in the shape of his ears, and then I place it in the side of his head, and then I push in some more clay to just give it a little bit more support. Once you're finished with this arm, you'll repeat with the other. Now we are going to add the band of fur around Stitch's forehead for his hat. Next, we are going to add foil around the wire. I like to create kind of a taco shape with the foil so that it has a slight indentation for his ear. Be sure to highlight the little notches in his ears. Once you are finished with his ears, we are going to add the tail of his hat with ultralight or foil if you prefer. If you use ultralight, be sure to bake it before you apply the super Sculpey on top of it. Once you have baked and covered your hat with Super Sculpey, you are going to apply the little ball at the end of his hat, and then create the fur texture. To finish off his hat, we add 2 holly leaves and 3 holly berries to the front of his hat. Now it's time to paint. All of my paint colors will be listed in the description below. For the inside of the ears, the color that I chose was a little bit lighter than I would have preferred his ears to be, so after I painted it this color, I decided to change it to a slightly darker color. If you are making your Santa Stitch a tumbler, be sure to seal it with an FDA compliant epoxy or an epoxy alternative like Crystalac. Here is our finished Santa Stitch. I really loved making this one. This was definitely fun for me. If you enjoyed watching me make this, like and subscribe to my channel for more of my 3D designs. Have a great day and remember to stay crafty.